NBS Studios presents Splash and Dash, short stories meant to entertain and amuse. Splash and Dash is sponsored by Roughneck Soap. Guys, are you tired of soap that doesn't work as hard as you do? Try an all-natural soap that will wash away all the gunk and grime of your day and leave you feeling fresh and clean. Go to roughnecksoap.com and get yours today. Roughneck Soap, made for men, approved by women. Splash and Dash's feature presentation is She's from a Dimensional Rift, but I think she likes me, or she speaks in echoes of forgotten stars, and I said, Sup, written by D.W. Black, narrated by NBS Studios. When Marcus stepped out of his house that morning, he paused on the porch, stretched, and yawned. He adjusted his hoodie, put on his headphones, and tapped play on his phone. Erykah Badu slid into his ears like a warm bath. It was shaping up to be a decent Thursday, considering the sky hadn't split open yet and his neighbor hadn't devoured any mailmen this week. He waved lazily to Gary, 2 doors down, or at least that's what he called the squid-faced thing that lived 2 doors down. Gary waved back with one of its arms or tongues or tentacles. Whatever. It was hard to tell. Mmm, Gary called out in a sound not unlike a blender being forced to process rebar. Marcus winced. You too, man, he replied. It was safer that way. Last time he tried to engage in actual conversation, he bled from the nose for 3 hours and had dreams about him choosing a place for his afterlife, which turned out to be incredibly boring, narrated by Morgan Freeman. He climbed into his car, a trusty, slightly dented '09 Chevy Impala with a sticker that said, "My other ride is the multiverse," and pulled out of his cracked driveway. The roads were mostly clear these days. Most people had either moved to the green zones or been absorbed into the fabric of non-time. Suburbia had quieted considerably, and for Marcus was ideal. The local grocery store was one of the last still open and functional in the district. Pockmarked by vines that hummed Gregorian chants and guarded by a sentient lamppost that demanded riddles at the entrance, it had a certain charm. Marcus had long since learned to ignore the riddles and just bribe the post with hot Cheetos. Sure, the lamppost expressed its gratitude in another riddle, but it gave the droll chore of making groceries a pleasant highlight and just a little less mundane. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed softly. Half the aisles were still regular human food: cereal, soup, boxed mac, and cheese. The other half had been quietly annexed by something not entirely native to the human plane of existence. Marcus had once accidentally bought a carton of temporal anchovies. He'd spent 2 hours waiting for a stop sign to change to green before he proceeded to cross the street, walked around the block 7 times, then 7 more backwards, and when he returned home attempted to vacuum the roof before Gary had insisted he go inside and try to sleep. It was the one time he'd understood what he was saying without adverse effects. He tossed a box of Pop-Tarts into his cart, strawberry, unfrosted, and was reaching for some peanut butter when something nudged his cart. He looked up. The woman, he was fairly certain it was a woman of some sort, had dusky, purplish skin with a shimmering undertone of fractal hues. She had one horn, which curled backward like a ram's, a tail that flicked lazily like a bored cat, and cloven hooves that tapped the floor in a rhythm that didn't match any beat known to man. Her hair moved like it was underwater. "Oh," she said, eyes wide with the glee of someone who just discovered grits for the first time and was unsure about the taste, but could become accustomed to the flavor. Her voice was filtered through about 12 different echo chambers, some of which seemed to operate on seductiveness alone. "You can perceive me." Marcus blinked. "Yeah, but I wouldn't call it a hobby. Most humans scream, or seize, or vomit an entire REM cycle. Well, I guess I'm built different, although you resemble a succubus of some sort." Marcus shrugged but was wary. "Oh? You must have exceptional cognitive shielding?" The entity cooed. "Nah. The trick is to take things as they are without trying to force them to be something else, and when all else fails, sometimes there's nothing wrong with not knowing." She tilted her head, fascinated. "You choose not to know?" What's to know? Marcus shrugged. I mean, you're clearly some sort of dimensional being, and also, you're a woman. Both categories come with some degree of don't try too hard to understand, just nod and be polite. Marcus selected his favorite jar of jam with a smile, as it appeared to be a regular jar of jam. She stared at him. Then, slowly, a small trickle of what looked like Greek yogurt and glitter started leaking from one nostril. Marcus noticed and frowned. You okay? Trying to understand. She put a hand on her head. I think I'm starting to get dizzy. Marcus approached, hand held up hesitantly. Maybe you're trying too hard? But I want to comprehend you. She mumbled, almost swooning. Oh! Marcus realized the bumping into the cart had been intentional. Marcus sighed. Look, comprehension is overrated. What you want is relatability. That's how humans do it. You think your average person understands politics? Why Netflix makes one season of a show? People who don't like pineapple on pizza? No, we relate, we accept, we move on. She considered that, her horn vibrating subtly. That may be the wisest thing I've ever heard. You should get out more. You are Marcus. Did you just read my mind? Marcus asked. No, your hoodie says, property of Marcus's existential crisis. Right. Forgot I was wearing that one. Marcus smiled at his mistake. She extended a hand, which briefly rotated in 3 directions before settling into a shape he could reasonably shake. I am called Euranthexia of the 8th resonant bloom. He took her hand. It was warm, slightly tingly, and made him feel unexpectedly euphoric. I'm gonna call you Rennie. She blinked 3 sets of eyelids and smiled as she understood his meaning. That is acceptable. They continued shopping together. She explained she'd been pulled from her dimension unexpectedly by a gibbering toaster. Being new to the area, she was looking for friends and found Earth very interesting. She asked about each product like a tourist in an alien bazaar. This cheese whiz? Is it sapient? Rennie asked, finding the concept of aerosolized dairy products particularly intriguing. Not anymore, I don't think. I had it once and had to stay inside for 3 days or risk floating away. Marcus replied, picking up 2 cans for them both. This box says Captain Crunch. Was he an actual military officer? Rennie inquired. Stolen valor, probably. He might have been a pirate, Marcus guessed. Why does this store sell both marshmallows and anti-dimensional stabilizers in the same aisle? She remarked. That's called synergy. Marshmallows being related to peeps can be quite mischievous. By the time they reached the checkout, staffed by a polite humanoid with no mouth and infinite eyes, like looking into 2 mirrors pressed close together, Rennie looked positively giddy. You are very interesting, Marcus. She drew her shoulders up expectantly. I get that a lot. Usually from exes and tax auditors. Marcus smiled. Although the latter had been less prevalent since the dimensional rifts had dotted across the continents. I wish to spend more time with you, to learn the art of relatability. You know I mostly just watch Hulu and work in my mad scientist's lab making models on my 3D printer, right? Then teach me your Hulu and your models. Marcus considered this. He didn't have a lot going on, and it wasn't every day that a dimensional entity politely asked to hang out. Plus, she hadn't tried to eat his soul or speak his birth name backward into a carefully crafted chalk circle. All right, he said, but no weird mind melds without consent, and you can't siphon any of my life force if we kiss. Agreed, she smiled. You are silly. I don't siphon any of your life force, but I do feel satiated from interacting with you. Do you have a place to live yet? Marcus asked. I have been living in the home decor section at IKEA. They are very nice, Rennie said proudly. Yeah, there's a free house close to mine. How about you move there? Marcus offered, and she radiated puce waves of energy, which Marcus took to be a sign of pleasure. Cool. You free tonight? Time is a lie, Marcus. I'll take that as a yes. She smiled, or performed the dimensional equivalent, which involved a flickering halo and the sudden scent of summer rays in a field of flowers. They walked out of the store together, bags in hand. The lamppost at the entrance demanded a riddle, and Rennie simply stared at it until it short-circuited and slumped into a puddle of postmodern shame like a Salvador Dali painting. "He gonna be okay?" Marcus asked, slight concern etched on his brow. "He will be fine once he considers his life choices. He was actually insulting you according to his dimension's way of expressing disapproval," Rennie said with some disdain. "Who knew?" Marcus said, "I like you already." "I like you too," she replied, "even if I can't understand a single thing you're saying." He grinned. "Welcome to dating." And somewhere in the sky above, a rift in reality sighed contentedly and stitched itself closed. Just a little. This concludes our current story. Splash and Dash is sponsored by Roughneck Soap and supported by viewers like you. Click like, subscribe, share, and comment to join us in the next story from Splash and Dash.